अच्छा जी, तो पहला क्वेश्चन आपसे कह रहा है कि विच आउटकम डिपेंड्स अपॉन द डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर। तो इसका आंसर क्या होगा? इसका आंसर होगा डी फॉर डेविड, डिक्रीज इन अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट। ठीक है जी। क्यों, ऐसा क्यों है? Why is it D? Why would it be D? Because obviously, yeah, so why would it be D? Which outcome depends upon division of labor. So obviously, if you divide labor and then you division of labor, this is the first step. What is the second step after division of labor? The second step is specialization, right? आप specialization जब करते हैं, तो obviously before specialization is the process where division of labor is done because you're dividing labor according to specialist skills. उसके बाद when you do specialization, if you specialize in it, then you specialize in what? In which you have a comparative advantage, right? So obviously, अगर आप specialize करेंगे into something that you have a comparative advantage, you will have a lower opportunity cost. And वैसे भी specialization will also result into lower opportunity cost in itself as well. Because if you specialize in something, you become good at it, you become productive at it. So the opportunity cost of producing that outcome will be less, because if your resources are suited to produce something, let's say if your resources are suited to producing good A, then if you become more skilled and specialize in producing good A and you produce more of good A, then obviously the opportunity cost of producing good A will fall. So the opportunity cost of making good A will go down, which means that if you become specialized in good A and you make more of good A, then it means that less of good B is sacrificed, right? Less amounts of good B will be sacrificed to produce more and more quantities of good A, because your resources are suitable to produce, good A, right? अगर आपके रिसोर्सेज सूटेड नहीं होते किसी चीज को प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए, और अगर आप उस चीज को प्रोड्यूस करते हो, फॉर इंस्टेंस आपके रिसोर्सेज अगर नहीं है सूटेबल प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए एक प्रोडक्ट, और अगर आप वही प्रोडक्ट प्रोड्यूस करने लग जाए, तो फिर उसके अंदर जब आप उस प्रोडक्ट को प्रोड्यूस करेंगे तो उसकी अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट हाई होगी. सो फॉर इंस्टेंस, this is representing, let's say this is good A and this is good B. So if you're producing good A, if you're producing more and more of good A because your resources are not suitable to produce good A, instead your resources are suitable to produce good B, क्योंकि आपके पास स्पेशलाइजेशन जो है वो गुड बी की है, लेकिन अगर आप गुड ए बनाएंगे तो गुड ए बनाने की अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट जो है वो बढ़ती चली जाएगी. ठीक है. सिमिलरली, अगर आपके जो रिसोर्सेज हैं वो सूटेबल हैं टू प्रोड्यूस गुड ए, ठीक है, and if you specialize in good A, right? If you specialize in good A and your resources are suitable to produce good A, so the more good A you make, so if you move from point A to point B, the opportunity cost of moving from point A to point B will actually go down, right? This is the graph of decreasing opportunity cost when the PPC is convex to the origin, right? And this is increasing opportunity cost when it is concave to the origin. So if you are specialized into something and the more you produce it, right, the division of labor results into specialization, and the more you do it, that results into a lower opportunity cost. The less of other goods you have to sacrifice then. Number 2, an increase in the consumption by one good leaves the benefits available to others undiminished. बहुत अच्छा सवाल है. Which does this statement define? तो ये क्या statement define कर रहा है? ये define कर रहा है public good. Because just an increase in consumption leaves the benefit available to others undiminished, which means that it is non-rivalrous. So there is a characteristic of non-rivalry, right? So if you consume a particular good and the amount of benefit that is available to others is not reduced, then that's a public good, right? Question number 3. Question number 3 says the diagram shows a production possibility curve for a farmer, right? फिर कहता है the original position is X. If the farmer switches some of the land from producing pears to producing apples, which point represents his new position? So ये उसकी position दी हुई है. He is currently at point X, and if he produces more of apples, he'll produce less of pears, right? So if he produces more of apples, he'll produce less of pears. So ये X से किस पे आ जाएगा? B पे आ जाएगा. This is a simple question. इन्होंने जो ये वाला अच्छा point D पे हम कब आएंगे? When would we come on point D? Point D is showing that the curve is pivoting outwards, right? When does the curve pivots outwards? The curve pivots outwards when there is a when there would be an increase in productive capacity of producing only apples, right? तो अगर increase in productive potential of producing apples हो रहा है खाली, तब curve pivot करेगा outwards like this, ठीक है? इसी तरीके से अगर increase in productive capacity हो रही है peers के लिए, तो curve कैसे करेगा outward pivot? Curve pivot करेगा इस तरीके से outwards. This would represent that there is an increase in productive capacity of producing only peers. However, अगर curve इस तरीके से shift हो रहा है like this is representing a parallel shift, ठीक है? ये increase कर रहा है, ये बता रहा है if this distance is the same, if this distance is equal to this distance, it means that the productive capacity has increased by the same amount, right? But अगर ये ऐसे है, let's suppose if this is like this, so for instance if this is like this, ये क्या बता रहा है? What is this telling you? यहाँ पे curve is not pivoting, but let's suppose this is good B and let's suppose this is good A. So this is telling you that, you know, there's an increase in productive capacity more for good B than for good A, because this distance is less, this distance is less and this distance is more, right? So there's an increase in productive capacity of good B is higher than the productive potential may increase of good A. Okay? Question number 4 is telling you a student buys a flute for $80 but then is unable to learn to play it. It has a resale value of $50, while the shop retail price of the same type of flute has risen to 95. What is the present opportunity cost to the student of keeping the flute? एक स्टूडेंट $80 का फ्लूट खरीद चुका है, उसको समझ नहीं आ रहा कि मैं कैसे इस्तेमाल करूं, तो उसके लिए किसी काम का नहीं है, तो उसको बेच देना चाहिए. जब वो बेचने जाएगा तो $50 की वो फ्लूट बिक जाएगी. अभी करंटली वो फ्लूट जो है वो शॉप में रिटेल प्राइस पे 95 की मिल रही है. अगर स्टूडेंट उस फ्लूट को नहीं बेचता तो वो कितने खो देता है? $50 वो खो देगा. So that is the opportunity cost of keeping the flute. So इसका आंसर होना चाहिए 4 का बॉय, ठीक है? Because he's keeping the flute. If he's keeping the flute, then obviously what is he foregoing? Opportunity cost is the benefit foregone. So he's foregoing the benefit of $50. ठीक है? Oh, by the way, constant opportunity cost, maybe there is a parallel shift as well. So for example, if the PPC is a linear straight line, it represents a constant opportunity cost. What does constant opportunity cost shows? Constant opportunity cost shows that the opportunity cost of, let's say if you're making good A, you're making 1 unit of good A and you have 5 units of good B, right? And then if you make another unit, if you make one more unit of good A, so let's say you forgo 2 units of good B, and then when you make one more unit of good A, you forgo 2 units of good B. So the opportunity cost of producing each unit of good A is exactly 2 units of good B forgone, right? So this is constant opportunity cost. By the way, again, PPC, if it's a straight line, it represents that the opportunity cost is constant. When is the opportunity cost constant? The opportunity cost is constant when the resources to produce good A and good B are exactly, they are both suited to producing good A and good B. So if your factors of production are equally suited to producing good B and good A, the opportunity cost of producing more of good A would be the equal amount of good B that you forgo. And similarly, the opportunity cost of producing more of good B would be equal amount of good A that you forgo. So iske andar bhi there is a parallel shift. This is representing that there is an increase in productive capacity for producing both good A and good B as PPC curve shifts outward from PPC1 to PPC2. And you know the reasons why PPC curve shifts outwards, okay? But again, this is representing a parallel shift, right? But this kind of shift, if it shifts like this, for instance, if it shifts like this is representing a pivotal shift. PPC1, say PPC2. The only difference is that in this PPC and in this PPC, the only difference is that this PPC, both are pivotal shifts, but this is a pivotal shift of increasing, constant opportunity cost. This is a pivotal shift of increasing opportunity cost. Okay? Clear? Moving forward, question number 5. The diagram shows a supply curve for beef. Supply curve bana hua hai upward sloping. What explains why the supply curve for beef slope upwards? What explains why the supply curve for beef slope upwards? An increase in demand for beef will bring upon an increase in supply. So, इससे upward sloping nature तो नहीं नजर आ रही है हमें. This is a general statement. ये तो we know that demand increase होगी तो quantity supplied will extend. Farmers' productivity rises, prices rise. Again, this has nothing to do with it, because if prices will rise, then quantity supplied will extend. It has nothing to do with farmers' productivity. And even if productivity rises, then supply curve shifts. Increased production leads to reduction in cost. Again, this is an absurd statement. It's not necessary that production cost may fall. And even if it does fall, even then, it has nothing to do with the reason that why supply curve is upward sloping. So we have cancelled out 3 answers, which means that we are only left with 1. So we will mark this. Even if we do not know that this is the right answer, we will still mark it because we know for sure that A, B, and C is the wrong answer. That is why you solve the MCQ through elimination method if you don't know the answer. However, let me tell you, this is the answer. Why? Because I remember I've talked to you, I've told you many times that supply is a marginal cost curve, and there was a reason why I kept on insisting to know the supply through marginal cost. And what is marginal cost? Marginal cost is the cost of producing an additional unit, right? It is the cost of making an additional unit. So the cost of additional beef production rises, the output rises. And why does MC rises? Because of law of diminishing returns. You've already studied that because of law of diminishing returns, the cost of producing each additional unit keeps on rising. And that is the reason why as more and more units of beef will be produced, each additional unit of beef will cost more to produce. And for that reason, the marginal cost of producing each additional beef will go up. And since the marginal cost of beef production will keep on rising, that is why, since supply curve is the marginal cost curve, that is why it slopes upwards. Question number 6 says, a theater increases the price of its tickets from 10 to 15. As a result, total receipts decrease from 10,000 to 6,000. Within what range does the price lasso demand for tickets lie? Look at this. This is the demand curve. हमारे पास let me draw it. In fact, क्या नाम है ये हमारे पास आ गया 10, and then we have quantity Q1, and then price rises to 15. You have quantity Q2. Okay. So total receipts premium, which is your total sales, that is your total revenue, which is price times quantity. So ये हमारे पास आ गई quantity demanded. Then you have price. And then so basically अब इसमें बताता हूँ क्या हो रहा है. So let's find out this quantity. अब अगर इस quantity के ऊपर total sales कितनी दी हुई है so total sales हमारे पास इसमें लिखा हुआ है as a result total receipts decrease from 10,000 to 6,000. ठीक है ना. Total receipts हमारे पास decrease हो रही है. So ये पुरानी quantity है Q1, ये नई quantity है Q2. So Q1 के ऊपर हमारे पास जो total receipts आ रही हैं वो total revenue is basically 10,000, right? और ये कैसे आया 10,000? 10,000 equals to price times quantity, that is price is how much? Price is 10 multiplied by x. So x की value would be how much? So it would be divided by, it would be 1,000. So x is 1,000, which means that we come up with our first quantity, that is how much? We come up with our first quantity, that is 1,000. Now we'll come up with our second quantity. Total revenue is 6,000. It equals to price times quantity, that is, what is the price? Price is 15 times x. So x की value would be 6,000 divided by 15 is how much? Would be 400. अब जल्दी से निकाल लो PD. ये जो increase था, this would be 50%. ये जो decline होगा, that this would be how much? This would be how much? Calculate करो. 600 over 1,000. 60% से decline होगी, right? So obviously, if it's declining by 60%, so 60% percentage change in quantity demanded is 60% divided by the percentage change in price, which is a formula, divided by 50% is 1.2, right? So the elasticity is ranging from 1.1 to 1.4. So basically, it was given total receipts. That was the catch here. Total receipts means the total sales. Total sales means your total revenue, which is price times quantity. Okay, so we're done with question 6. Question number 7 says, a taxi firm raises fares at its busiest times by as much as 5 times around the normal fare. Taxi drivers and customers are notified of the change by mobile cell phone. What will result from this policy? Yeah. So what should be the answer? We don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. हमें समझ ही नहीं आ रहा सही आंसर क्या है. गलत आंसर निकालते हैं. What will result from this policy? It will be less likely that there is a market equilibrium. So, okay, so the market equilibrium will always be established in a free market. So obviously there won't be any shortage or disequilibrium in a free market. So obviously This shouldn't be the answer. And we can't really prove that whether this would result into market equilibrium or not. Potential customers will have less perfect information. Again, this is just a normal statement, means this is nothing to do with the question. The market surplus will become a shortage. So we really don't know whether there was a surplus, neither we know it will become a shortage or not, right? Because the information is insufficient to conclude whether it will be a sufficient shortage or a surplus. So D is the correct answer, because this is the only answer option left. But why is D the correct answer? I'll let you guys know. So it says a taxi firm raises fares at its busiest times as much as 5 times the normal fare. So you guys know that the busiest time is the time when the PD is what? PD is inelastic, right? So if the PD is inelastic, and then it says taxi drivers and customers are notified of the changes by the mobile cell phone. So we get a notification, and we, it just gives us a notification that the fares the amount of fares would be this much, the peak factor or whatever. This would be the amount of fare that would now be charged. You tell me something. If the taxi firms are increasing the amount by 5 times, it means that in those peak hours, what is going to happen? In those peak hours, the demand is inelastic, right? That is why they are, because it says that it raises fares at its busiest times. So the busiest times where demand would be inelastic, right? The more inelastic the demand is, the more the consumer is willing to pay, right? So the more the consumer is willing to pay, the more the consumer surplus. So the producers are simply tapping into that consumer surplus by increasing the fares. So basically, but how would it be successful? How would it benefit? अगर taxis ही नहीं होंगी उनके पास taxis ही available नहीं होंगी, so will it benefit them? No. So they have to ensure. So the increasing fares would only be successful if the supply of taxis is elastic, right? So during those times, if they want to cash on those revenues, if they want to cash on that consumer surplus, if they want to convert that inelastic, if they want to convert that consumer surplus into producer surplus, if they want to cash on those revenues, then obviously they have to make the supply more elastic. Understood? So this is the correct answer. ठीक है जी? अगर इनके पास taxis available नहीं होंगी, so what is going to happen? Obviously they won't be able to benefit from them. Fares बढ़ाते ना जितने बढ़ाने, जब taxis ही available नहीं होंगी. Again, it was a tricky question. Question 8 says the table shows Shanaz and Sunil's price elastic demand for restaurant meals and theatre tickets. So Shanaz ke restaurant meals ki PD is inelastic. For theatre, it's elastic. For Sunil, it's देखो इस तरह के जो क्वेश्चंस आएंगे ना जिसमें टेबल बड़ा होगा और कंक्लूजन्स उनसे ड्रॉ करने को बोलेगी, ये हमेशा एंड में करना. इनको अभी मत करना, पहले नहीं करना. कभी भी क्वेश्चन 7 के बाद क्वेश्चन 8 शुरू नहीं कर देना, क्योंकि इसमें टेबल पढ़ने में टाइम लगेगा, कंक्लूजन को पढ़ने में टाइम लगता है. तो दिस इज अ क्वेश्चन दैट हमेशा एंड में करते हैं, ठीक है. उसके बाद सुनील की जो डिमांड है वो रेस्टोरेंट की इलास्टिक है, उसकी इलास्टिक है. अच्छा जी, क्वेश्चन नंबर 8. देयर इज अ राइज इन द प्राइस ऑफ रेस्टोरेंट मील्स. प्राइस ऑफ रेस्टोरेंट मील्स बढ़ रही है, एंड देयर इज अ फॉल इन द प्राइस ऑफ थिएटर. ठीक है जी. What can be concluded after these price changes? Restaurant owners will receive more income. So restaurant owners will receive more income. We can't conclude that. Why? Because first of all, Shanaz will go. पहली बात तो ये कि जब अपना restaurants are getting expensive, right? The restaurant meals are getting expensive. So Shanaz will not have a lot of impact, because for her, she goes to the restaurant maybe every day because uski demand inelastic hai, so she will still go on to the restaurant. But for a person like Sunil, for him it's elastic. So total expenditure for Shanaz will rise, and total expenditure for Sunil will fall. Total expenditure is total revenue for the firm. Total revenue for the firm will rise. Total revenue for the firm will fall. Right. So I think overall, since and let's assume that Sunil and Shanaz are the only two customers that go in that restaurant, for any restaurant, let's say, for a particular restaurant, then overall from this we can conclude that, since the coefficient of Sunil is greater than the coefficient of Shanaz, so the overall impact in total revenue will be falling, because the coefficient of Sunil is stronger than the coefficient of Shanaz, which means that the impact Sunil will bring on the restaurant will be greater than the impact Shanaz will bring. So Shanaz ki वजह से total revenue will be rising, Sunil की total revenue will be falling. So overall impact will be that total revenue will be falling. But this says restaurant owner will receive more income, so it's wrong. Shanaz will spend more money on both theatre tickets and restaurants. Now let's see iska kya hoga. Let's see what's happening to Shanaz. So it says Shanaz will spend more money on theater tickets. So basically, let's see. So theater tickets के लिए, obviously, since Shanaz की जो theater tickets की price as to demand है, that's elastic, and the price of theater tickets is falling. So the price of theater tickets is falling, and the PED is elastic. It means that the total expenditure will actually go up, right? And for Sunil, sorry, not for Sunil. Sunil का तो हमने कुछ नहीं करना. Shanaz की बात करें. And the restaurant meals as well. So restaurant की prices जो हैं, they are actually rising. And for Shanaz, the demand is inelastic, so total expenditure will go up as well. So basically what's happening is, so the answer should be B. Now, you need to understand this. Dekho, the price of restaurant is actually going up, going up. And for Shanaz, the PED for restaurants is inelastic. Remember, हमने rule establish किया था कि जब demand inelastic होती है, whenever the demand is inelastic and price goes up, total expenditure goes up, total revenue goes up. ठीक है जी? And when price falls, total expenditure falls, total revenue falls as well. And if the demand is elastic, when price goes up, total expenditure goes down, total revenue goes down as well. And when price goes down, total expenditure goes up, and total revenue goes up as well. Okay? So this is the rule, remember that. Why is this the rule? How is it the rule? You guys know it. Okay? Question number 9, it says, the diagram shows a demand curve for a normal product, which 2 points indicate a move from price. Okay. So remember that a demand curve that is drawn downward sloping, a linear demand curve. Remember I told you that a linear demand curve has different elasticities along different points, have different elasticities along different points, right? So different elasticities along different products, along different points, right? Which means that, at this point, in the middle, the PED is unitary elastic. Above this, it's the PED is greater than 1, and below this, its PED is less than 1. Okay? So if it says that which 2 points indicate a move from price inelastic point to less inelastic. So from price inelastic to less inelastic. So let's see. The answer to this question should be A. W2X nahi, because W pe to already it will be elastic, so it says from inelastic to less elastic. X to W, from X to W bhi nahi hoga, because so it can't be W, it can't be A, it can't be B, because X and W both are points that are lying where PED is greater than 1, right? So it should either be Y, it should either be C or D. Because Y is also lying at a point where it's inelastic, Z is also lying in an area, in a region where it's inelastic. So Y to Z हो सकता है, नहीं Y to Z नहीं हो सकता. Why? Because if you move from Y to Z, although Y to Z are both lying in the area where the region on the linear demand curve where PED is less than 1, that's it's inelastic. But you can say that Z is more inelastic than Y, right? Z is more inelastic than Y, because the more you're going down, the more down you go on the demand curve, the more inelastic the demand becomes, right? The demand becomes, or the more or the less elastic the demand. I can also put it this way as well. Kuch MCQs mein is tarah bhi aa sakta hai. Does it become more less elastic or not? So it means the same thing. If I say it becomes more inelastic, so I can also say it becomes less elastic, or the less elastic it becomes. Okay? Makes sense? So the answer should be Z to Y. Okay? Because it's saying from a price inelastic to a less elastic. It's not saying inelastic. Sorry, it's not saying elastic. It's saying from more inelastic to less inelastic. Because Z is more inelastic, Y is less inelastic. The answer should be D. Question number 10. In the diagram, the supply of a product increases while the demand curve does not shift. Okay? Which row correctly identifies the impact on consumer and producer surplus? So इसमें क्या हो रहा है? Supply increase हो रही है, और जब supply increase होती है, so it says supply is increasing. Which row correctly identifies the resulting impact on consumer and producer surplus? First of all, producer surplus इसमें rise होगा, तो आंसर या तो A भी नहीं हो सकता और इसका आंसर C भी नहीं हो सकता, या तो B या D है. ठीक है ना? तो जब सप्लाई बढ़ रही है, प्रोड्यूसर सरप्लस इंक्रीज होगा, या तो B या D है. सही है. अब प्राइस गिर रही है, तो कंज्यूमर सरप्लस जो है वो ऑब्वियसली इंक्रीज हो रहा होगा. So the answer is D. Why? Because whenever the supply falls, the producer surplus has increases as well as the consumer surplus. Now, why is that? So the producer surplus will basically rise because let's say this is your original producer surplus. All of this is your original producer surplus, and now basically some of the producer surplus will fall, such as this was your original producer surplus, right? This was the original producer surplus, and this was your producer surplus. Now your new producer surplus. So this is your you can say new producer surplus, right? This is your new producer surplus. If this is your new producer surplus, then this all and this entire area, this entire blue area, is actually representing your gain in producer surplus, right? And this area is actually representing your fall in producer surplus. Now, there is a reason you need to understand. The thing is that, okay, so basically this area, this area is representing fall in producer surplus. So the thing is that whether the gain is exceeding the fall or not. If the gain is exceeding the fall, because a lot of you, because diagrammatically you cannot actually answer this question. Graph dekh ke you cannot make this conclusion that whether the gain exceeds the fall or not. You have to intuitively think. And the intuition here is, the simple intuition is that since supply curve is a intuitively think this. हम diagrammatically ये नहीं देख सकते. तो intuitively हम क्या बोलेंगे? Intuitively हम बोलेंगे that the fall in marginal cost exceeds the fall in price. So if the fall in marginal cost exceeds the fall in price, the producer, basically, what is producer surplus? Producer surplus is the difference between price and marginal cost. The marginal cost is the minimum price the producer is willing to accept minus the price he accepts, right? So let's say if the price is 10 and the marginal cost is, let's say, 7, the producer surplus is 3, right? But if the price falls to from 10, the price falls to 8, and the marginal cost falls to 2, then producer surplus is actually rising from 3 to 6. Why? Because the marginal cost में fall जो था वो 7 से 2 था, price का fall 10. Just because the price is falling, you can't say producer surplus has to fall. समझ में आ गई बात? This is the mathematical explanation for it. So remember, and there's another reason that you can say as well. And since the producer ends up selling more units, so overall the producer gains in terms of welfare because he ends up selling more units as well, which obviously means that the overall producer surplus will actually increase instead of falling. That is why D is the answer. And question number 11. The diagram shows the market demand and supply for a good. Which statement is not valid? Okay. What should be the correct answer? The correct answer should be at OP1, UV represents the market surplus. First of all, at OP1, UV represents the market surplus. This is the market surplus, sorry. This is the market surplus. This is the surplus that we are talking about. It's OP1. This is the surplus because it's representing excess supply. So this is this statement is correct. At OP3, P3X represents the quantity that consumers would like to buy. So अगर हम बात करें किसकी, अगर हम बात करें OP3 की, so OP3 के ऊपर this quantity supplied would be the quantity supplied, and with the quantity demanded, this would be the quantity demanded. So yes, P3X, अगर हम बात करें, what is P3X? P3X is, this is P3X, right? So yes, definitely this quantity represents the quantity that consumers would like to buy, but only this quantity is available, right? Anyway, this is right as well. And okay, so the next question is, the next statement is that if the price falls from OP1 to OP3, if it falls from OP1 to OP3, the extra quantity demanded would be equal to the extra quantity supplied. No, this is not right, because, okay, so first of all, if the price were to fall from OP1 to OP3, the extra quantity that is being demanded, first of all, there is no extra quantity that is demanded. At OP1, there is a surplus. ठीक है ना? तो अगर ये बोलते ना कि the extra quantity supplied, that is the extra quantity supplied, that is whatever the extra was supplied, the surplus would be eliminated. ये फिर भी it would have made sense. But again, the point is, you need to understand that OP1 also represents a disequilibrium. OP3 also represents a disequilibrium. At OP3, you have a shortage. At OP1, you have a surplus. So if price falls from OP1 to OP3, the disequilibrium will not be eliminated. The disequilibrium would eliminate only at OP2, where the quantity demanded would actually equal quantity supplied. So the price were to fall from OP1 to OP3, the extra quantity demanded would equal the extra quantity supplied. This is not true as well, because ये कभी होने ही वाला ही नहीं था. हमेशा equilibrium, अगर प्राइस होती OP1 और अगर प्राइस OP1 से OP2 हो जाती, तो जितना भी सरप्लस था वो खत्म हो जाता, because there would have been a contraction in supply and an extension in demand, and all the surplus would have ended. If the price would have been OP3 and OP3 से हम OP2 पे आते, so again जितनी भी shortage थी वो खत्म हो जाती, because there would have been an contraction in demand and there would have been an extension in supply, and automatically the shortage would have been eliminated. And that is why we say that in free markets, basically free markets क्या होती है? Whenever there's a demand and supply diagram drawn, it means it's a free market. Free market के अंदर automatically surpluses और shortages खत्म हो जाते हैं because of price mechanism. OP2 is the market price. Yes, OP2 is the market price. So C is the correct answer. हाँ, अब ये बड़ा अच्छा सवाल आ गया है. For which curve is the value of price elasticity of supply not the same at all points on the curve? अब आप ये बात बहुत गौर से सुनिएगा मेरी. This is something new that I wanted to teach you all. First of all, this curve is showing that PES is equals to 0 at all points on the supply curve. At all points on the supply curve. ठीक है? Guys, are you there? This is showing that PES is equals to infinity.
Yes, sir.
This is showing that PES is equals to infinity at all points on the supply curve. This curve that is drawn from the origin is showing that PES is equals to 1 at all points on the supply curve. At all points on the supply curve. At all these, there are 3 linear supply curves drawn. This, and this. All these linear supply curves are basically showing that that at each point on the curve, at each point on the supply curve, right, the PES would be equal to, if you take 2 points and you calculate the elasticity between these 2 points, it would equal to 0. If you take 2 points and you calculate the elasticity between these 2 points, it would equal to infinity. If you take 2 points and you calculate the elasticity, or whether you take these 2 points or these 2 points, it would always equal to 1. Now, whenever the supply is drawn either from the vertical axis, that is the y-axis, that is the price. ये वाला axis कौन सा होता है? सिर्फ price axis. That is the vertical axis or the y-axis. Whenever the supply curve is drawn from the y-axis, or if the supply curve is drawn from what axis, Vasif? From the quantity axis. From the y-axis, from the x-axis or the quantity axis. In these 2 linear supply curves, the price elasticity for S1 and S2, the PES varies at all points along the supply curve. पहली चीज तो ये है कि ये क्वेश्चन कह रहा है for which supply curve is the value of PS not the same at all points in the supply curve. S2 के लिए same होगा, for S4 भी same होगा, PS infinity होगी, for S1 भी same होगा. So the answer would be S3 because it is drawn from the vertical axis, that is the y-axis. So the answer is S3. But again, isme I want to explain something to you guys which is very, very important. So I want to take the opportunity right now and explain it to you. First of all, you guys need to understand this is showing that, PES is greater than 1. Whenever supply is drawn from the y-axis, from the vertical axis, supply drawn from what axis? Vertical axis, that is y-axis. Overall, elasticity is greater than 1. It is an elastic supply curve. It is showing that supply curve is elastic whenever it will be drawn from the vertical axis. However, although it will be elastic, but degree of elasticity will vary. What is the elasticity at this point? Do you know? The elasticity at this point, PES is equals to infinity. इस point पे elasticity infinity होगी. अब गौर से सुनना. As you go up the supply curve, the PES becomes less elastic. आ गई बात समझ में? ये रूल याद रख लो. if the supply curve is starting from the vertical axis, at the vertical axis the PES is equal to infinity. As you go up the supply curve, so it will become less elastic. So the range of elasticity, अगर इसकी तुम्हें range of elasticity मैं बता दूं, the range of elasticity ranges from infinity to 1, यानी infinity to 1 के बीच में होगी, ठीक है, 1 से नीचे नहीं हो सकती, because why? Because overall supply curve elastic है. उसके बाद अगर तुम्हारा supply curve starts from the x axis like this, ठीक है जी, so PES overall is less than 1, that is it is inelastic, ठीक है. लेकिन at this point, what is the value of PES at this point? At this point PES is equals to 0, ठीक है. At this point PES equals to 0. However, as you go up the curve, what happens? The PES becomes more elastic. The PES becomes less inelastic. 13 is very simple. 13 would be C. So nothing, the lowest price of the producer, the minimum price the producer is willing to accept minus the price that is sold for. अच्छा जी, आगे बढ़ते हैं. Question number 14. A government wishes to raise the income of farmers without raising the price of food to consumers. गवर्नमेंट चाहती है कि भाई इनकम बढ़ जाए फार्मर्स की, फार्मर्स की इनकम्स बढ़ जाए और फूड की प्राइसेस भी ना बढ़े. सो इसका क्या तरीका है? सब्सिडी देंगे ना, आप सिंपल सब्सिडी दो. सब्सिडी से क्या होगा? सब्सिडी देने की वजह से आपको पता है कि सब्सिडी इंक्रीजेस टोटल रेवेन्यू. टोटल रेवेन्यू फॉर फर्म हमेशा इंक्रीज होता है. सब्सिडी की वजह से टोटल रेवेन्यू फॉर फर्म हमेशा इंक्रीज होता है. इसके दो इम्पैक्ट होते हैं. एक को रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम आता है, रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम सेलिंग द गुड्स, प्लस हमारे पास इनकम ऑफ सब्सिडी भी तो आती है. इनकम ऑफ सब्सिडी का पैसा भी तो आ रहा होता है हमारे पास. सो रेवेन्यू फॉर फर्म्स विल राइज. सो द आंसर इज सी. पहली बात तो ये है कि ए और बी वैसे भी नहीं हो सकता, बिकॉज मैक्सिमम प्राइस हमेशा अबव द इक्विलिब्रियम नहीं होती, बिलो होती है, मिनिमम अबव होती है, तो ये तो ऐसी बेकार है. रिलीज ऑफ गवर्नमेंट फूड स्टॉक्स इनटू द मार्केट, इससे फार्मर्स की इनकम को थोड़ी तो फर्क पड़ेगा. कंज्यूमर्स को अलबत्ता, मतलब एज इन, इससे तो बेसिकली एक तरह से शॉर्टेज एलिमिनेट हो रही है. इससे कंज्यूमर और प्रोड्यूसर्स का क्या फायदा हो रहा है? क्वेश्चन नंबर 15. सप्लाई इंक्रीज हो रही है. व्हाट इज द चेंज इन सेल्स रेवेन्यू रिसीव्ड बाय द राइस फार्मर? तो पुराना रेवेन्यू क्या था? पुराना रेवेन्यू जो था वो 32 मल्टीप्लाई बाय 18 था. कर लो जरा कैलकुलेटर पे, आई डोंट हैव अ कैलकुलेटर. 32 times 18 was the old revenue. 576 was the old revenue. The new revenue should actually be, the new revenue should be 30 times 20. That is how much? 600. So अब अच्छा, अब एक इधर देखो. What is the change in sales revenue received by the farmer? तो इसका आंसर हमें क्या नजर आ रहा है? इसका आंसर हमें नजर आ रहा है, अब और 2 मिनट के लिए जरा गौर करना पड़ेगा उसको, क्योंकि थोड़ा सा मामला टेक्निकल भी हो सकता है. हमें नजर आ रहा है कि चेंज इन सेल्स रेवेन्यू जो है वो, अच्छा चेंज इन सेल्स रेवेन्यू कह रहे हैं, तो चेंज इन सेल्स रेवेन्यू जो है वो हमारा 24 है. अगर वो तुमसे ये कहते हैं टोटल रेवेन्यू हमारा, अगर वो तुमसे ये कहते हैं व्हाट इज द चेंज इन टोटल रेवेन्यू कहते हैं, अगर वो तुमसे ये सवाल पूछता है ना कि व्हाट इज द चेंज इन टोटल रेवेन्यू इज बेसिकली सेल्स रेवेन्यू प्लस द सब्सिडी रेवेन्यू ना, बेसिकली टोटल रेवेन्यू फर्म्स का. अगर वो तुमसे पूछता तो फिर वो तुम्हें लाजमी कहता कि ये जो सप्लाई इंक्रीज हो रही है सब्सिडी की वजह से हो रही है. लाजमी वो तुमसे ये कहता है. और अगर सब्सिडी की वजह से इंक्रीज हो रही होती तो फिर क्या होता? नया रेवेन्यू होता तुम्हारे पास 30 times 20 सेल्स रेवेन्यू, और सब्सिडी का अमाउंट is the basic difference between the two supply curves. So that is 35 minus 30. That is 35 minus 30 is the subsidy per unit. Multiply by how many units are you selling? 20 units you are selling. So इन दोनों को टोटल करना होता है. If अगर वो तुमसे कहता है what is the total incomes, total income अगर वो तुमसे पूछता है, in fact not total revenue, total income would have been the sales revenue, or you can say total revenue plus the subsidy income. Total income, in fact, yeah. So इसमें definitely तुम्हें बोलते हैं सब्सिडी है. Anyways, question number 16. Money is paid by the government to unemployed. अब यहाँ से मैक्रो शुरू कर दिया इन्होंने. Money is paid by the government to an unemployed worker in the form of a benefit. ये तो बहुत repeated question है welfare benefits और transfer payments के बारे में पूछ रहा होता है. Transfer payments में क्या होता है? It just involves a transfer of payment without any exchange of goods or service or without any economic activity or without any production of goods and service. It's just a transfer. If this is a government and Mr. A is unemployed, so the government is giving Mr. A, let's say $100 a week. So Mr. A is not buying anything from the government. So it does not involve any economic activity or exchange of any goods and service against the money that is being given to Mr. A, or without the production of any goods and services. It's not that the government has produced some goods and the government is selling. It's not that Mr. A has produced some goods and the Mr. A is selling those goods to the government and the government in return is giving $100 to Mr. A. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. The payment is made without the production of goods and services taking place. In other words, the payment is made without any sort of economic activity or money transaction, economic activity or trade taking place. In fact, question 17: what describes a regressive tax? Low income earners pay a high proportion. Yes, 17 is the answer. Low income earners pay a high proportion of their income in tax, and high income earners. प्रोग्रेसिव में क्या होता है? प्रोग्रेसिव में हाई इनकम अर्नर्स जो होते हैं दे पे हाई प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ टैक्स, लो इनकम अर्नर्स पे लो प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ टैक्स. क्वेश्चन नंबर, और प्रोपोर्शनेट में क्या होता है? प्रोपोर्शनेट के अंदर बेसिकली whatever the whether you're a high income person or you're a low income person, so the amount of income that you pay in tax, the poor will also pay the same amount of income as a percentage of tax, yani in terms of tax burden. So in terms of tax burden, the burden would, you can say that would proportionately be increasing, not progressively be, but it would be exactly be proportional to the amount of incomes that you are earning. ठीक है? So for example, अगर तुम्हारी incomes you can say that तुम्हारी अगर incomes बढ़ रही हैं, ठीक है, तो तुम्हारा जो tax burden है वो नहीं बढ़ रहा. यानी तुम उतना ही you end up paying the same amount of tax as you were paying before, even if your incomes are rising, which is not a good thing as well. Progressive is, that is why we say that progressive is much better, because as your incomes progress, you end up paying a higher burden of tax. Question number 18. The government is concerned that foreign-owned companies are responsible for higher proportion of the economy's output. Therefore, it nationalizes timber extraction, which is controlled by a foreign-owned company. Yes, तो एक कंपनी है जो प्राइवेट सेक्टर में है और उसका बहुत हाई कंट्रीब्यूशन है जीडीपी में, टिम्बर एक्सट्रैक्शन, और उसको नेशनलाइज कर दिया गया. तो व्हाट बेनिफिट फॉर द विल द इकोनॉमी गेन फ्रॉम द चेंज इन ओनरशिप? इस तरह के सवाल आप अटेम्प्ट किया करें, इजी होते हैं. एग्जैक्टली, प्रॉफिट्स विल नो लॉन्गर बी सेंट अब्रॉड टू फॉरेन शेयरहोल्डर. सो इतना आपको पता होना चाहिए कि जो मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज होती हैं, दे टेक अवे ऑल देयर प्रॉफिट्स बैक. व्हाट विल डेफिनेटली लीड टू एन इंप्रूवमेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड? क्वेश्चन नंबर 19. ए तो नहीं हो सकता, डी होगा. एक्सपोर्ट प्राइसेस राइज व्हाइल इंपोर्ट प्राइसेस स्टे द सेम. So your export prices rise, then yes, terms of trade will improve. Import prices fall, yes, terms of trade will improve. Okay, but if export prices are rising while import prices are staying the same, again your terms of trade will definitely improve. Terms of trade is the ratio between, is the index of export prices over index of import prices. Question number 20. In the diagram, SD is the domestic supply, SW is world supply. This is a very good question. यार ये तो मजा आ रहा है मुझे, इसको देखते ही समझ गया मैं क्या है. जी, क्या करेंगे इसमें? आफ्टर, पहले क्या था? पहले एक फ्री सिस्टम था, ठीक है. उसके बाद गवर्नमेंट ने तमाम इंपोर्ट्स पे, सारी इंपोर्ट्स पे बैन लगा दी. पहले मतलब टोटली फ्री नहीं था, टैरिफ लगा हुआ था, लेकिन अब गवर्नमेंट ने बिल्कुल बैन कर दिया, बैन कर दी. पहले इंपोर्ट्स कितनी थी? हाउ मच वर यू इंपोर्टिंग? पहले यू वर इंपोर्टिंग 13-4, यू वर इंपोर्टिंग 9 यूनिट्स, राइट? यू वर इंपोर्टिंग 9 यूनिट्स. 9 वाज योर इंपोर्ट्स एट द वर्ल्ड प्राइस. नाउ व्हाट हैज हैपेंड? द गवर्नमेंट ने बोला एक कुछ भी इंपोर्ट नहीं होगा, जीरो इंपोर्ट. What will be the effect on the revenue of domestic producer and world producers? तो world producer का revenue क्या था? World producer का revenue ये था कि आप 9 units आप 9 units उनसे import कर रहे थे at a price of what? How much are you paying? What was the world price? 10. So obviously you were paying them $90. So this was their revenue. So the world producers would lose 90. So either it would be B or it would be D. ठीक है? So and let's see what were domestic producers, उनको क्या होगा. पहली बात तो ये कि domestic producers जो है वो क्या नाम है, गेन करेंगे या लूज करेंगे, ये देख लेते हैं. domestic producers जो है वो जब अब कितने यूनिट्स बिकेंगे इकोनॉमी के अंदर? obviously since you have banned the imports, since you have banned them, totally banned them, the product will be sold at the equilibrium price at $20 in the market, and 8 units will be sold. So what will be their gain? The gain would be 20 times 8, which is 160. So they would gain 160 units, and the world producers would lose $90. Sorry, they would gain $160 and they would lose $190. पहले imports थी 13 minus 4 at the world price. So you were importing 9 units and you were importing at the world price 10. So you were paying them $90. So तुम्हारे लिए expenditure था और उनके लिए revenue था. So they were gaining a revenue of $90. So now they would lose those $90. But because you're not importing anything from them. But if you eliminate all the imports, you ban them totally. So you're forcing the consumers to buy whatever that is available domestically at whatever price that is available domestically. So you're forcing them to buy at $20, and how many units are you forcing them to buy? You're forcing them to buy 8 units. So they are forced to buy 8 units at $20. So domestic firms would actually gain 160. Question number 21. The diagram shows the value of Nigerian naira against US dollar between 2015 and 16. पहली बात तो ये है कि $1 is equal to 170 naira. ठीक है जी. And we can see that in June 2016, it has gone up. So the dollar has gone up. We know that the dollar has gone up. So the naira has actually gone down. It has weakened. Now there can be two scenarios. Either it was a depreciation by the automatic demand and supply of the currency. Okay? Or there was a devaluation which was done by the government. Now the question is indicating a hint. कोई hint बता दे मुझे कि वो hint क्या है कि devaluation है. आंसर इसका सी है devaluation. इसका आंसर ये है कि गवर्नमेंट ने नायरा को गवर्नमेंट ने डॉलर को स्टेबल रखा हुआ था. डॉलर आपका स्टेबल चल रहा है 197 नायरा पे. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि यूएस गवर्नमेंट ने डॉलर की करेंसी अगेंस्ट द नाइजीरियन नायरा फिक्स रखी है. स्टेबल आपकी एक्सचेंज रेट में स्टेबल the correct stable at 197 I should say. स्टेबल रखी हुई है at 197. उसको मूव होने ही नहीं दिया है. जरा सा भी ऊपर जरा सा भी नीचे नहीं होने दिया. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ कि अगर वो स्टेबल है at 197 इट मींस इट्स फिक्स्ड. वो फिक्स हुई है 197 पे. आप देखें ना, कहीं से भी ऐसा नहीं है कि ये यूं हो रही है मूव, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. फिक्स हुई है 197 के ऊपर. इसका मतलब अगर वो 197 पे फिक्स हुई है और वो फिर सीधा ऊपर गई है, इसका मतलब है कि डॉलर जो है वो रीवैल्यू हुआ है. और अगर डॉलर को रीवैल्यू किया गया है, इसका मतलब नाइजीरियन करेंसी जो है वो डीवैल्यू हुई है. अगर डॉलर रीवैल्यू हुआ है अगेंस्ट द नाइजीरियन करेंसी, then obviously Nigerian currency has been devalued. So ये trick थी इसमें. So 95% people will end up they will be confused. This was an IQ question. इसमें trick थी इसमें कि आपने ये देखना था कि वो लाइन जो है वो stable है, मतलब as in fixed है at 197. Again, this is a good question to test a student's knowledge. Question 22. Countries M and N produce the world supply of machines and textiles. The table shows what each country produces and it divides the resources equally. What could happen according to the principles of comparative advantage? अच्छा जी, comparative advantage में हमने सीखा था comparative advantage में countries trade करते हैं जब उनकी opportunity cost low होती है. Country M की opportunity cost आ रही है 2:1. इसका क्या मतलब है? That for each unit of textile, country M has to forgo how many units of machines? 2 units of machines. Country N का ratio आ रहा है 3:1. This means that for each unit of textiles, country N has to forgo 3 units of machines. कंट्री एम को 1 यूनिट टेक्सटाइल के बनाने में 2 यूनिट मशीन के फर्गो करता है. ये कैसे मैंने निकाला? 2:1 और ये 501 502 301 302 रेशो निकाल लिया बेसिकली मैंने. तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि अगर 1 यूनिट मुझे बनाना हो टेक्सटाइल का कंट्री एम को, तो उसको 2 मशीन फर्गो करनी पड़ेगी. और अगर कंट्री एन को 1 टेक्सटाइल का बनाना हो यूनिट, तो उसको 3 फर्गो करनी पड़ेगी. तो किसमें किसको ज्यादा करनी पड़ेगी? कंट्री एन को मशीनें ज्यादा फर्गो करनी पड़ रही है टेक्सटाइल बनाने के लिए एज कंपेयर टू कंट्री एम. कंट्री एम को 2 मशीन फर्गो करनी पड़ रही है 1 यूनिट टेक्सटाइल का बनाने के लिए. इसका मतलब कि कंट्री एन की अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट टेक्सटाइल बनाने में ज्यादा है क्योंकि इसको 3 फर्गो करनी पड़ रही है. इसका मतलब कंट्री एम को टेक्सटाइल में स्पेशलाइज करना चाहिए. ठीक है, क्योंकि कंट्री एम के लिए टेक्सटाइल बनाने की अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट कम है. ठीक है, और बेसिकली कंट्री, अगर इसको टेक्सटाइल में करना चाहिए तो डेफिनेटली इसको जो है वो मशीन्स में करना चाहिए, लेकिन इसका भी देख लेते हैं। इसका सीन ये है, बेसिकली इसको मशीन में इसलिए करना चाहिए क्योंकि ये बेसिकली कंट्री एम की अगर हम बात करें, कंट्री एम जो है वो 2 मशीनें बना सकता है बाय फॉरगोइंग एक 1 टेक्सटाइल। कंट्री एम जो है अगर वो 2 मशीनें बना सकता है बाय फॉरगोइंग 1 टेक्सटाइल, लेकिन कंट्री एन 3 मशीनें बना सकता है बाय फॉरगोइंग द सेम 1 यूनिट ऑफ टेक्सटाइल। इसका मतलब कि कंट्री एन जो है वो मशीन ज्यादा बना सकता है, और कंट्री एन की अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट मशीन बनाने में कम है। चाहिए सी शुड बी द आंसर। कंट्री एम शुड स्पेशलाइज इन द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ टेक्सटाइल, कंट्री एन शुड स्पेशलाइज इन द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ मशीन्स। ठीक है, वेरी सिंपल। क्वेश्चन नंबर 23, इसमें एडी लेफ्ट पे जा रहा है। व्हाट कुड कॉज अ डिक्रीज इन एग्रीगेट डिमांड एंड इंक्रीज इन इनकम टैक्स? हाँ, इंक्रीज इन इनकम टैक्स शुड बी द आंसर, बिकॉज इनकम टैक्स इंक्रीज होगा तो कंज्यूमर एक्सपेंडिचर वुड फॉल, and yeah, so consumer expenditure follow, AD will fall to the left. बाकी 3 जो है doesn't make sense, ये नहीं होगा आंसर। increase in tax on goods, indirect tax होता है, indirect tax जब increase होता है तो aggregate supply that is short run AR SRAS left पे चला जाता है। increase in wage rates भी आपका SRAS को left पे ले जाएगा। Question number 24, two countries trade with one another without any forms of protection, they impose a common external tariff। कॉमन एक्सटर्नल टैरिफ में क्या होता है कि 2 कंट्रीज ए और बी बोलेंगे कि हम आपस में ट्रेड करेंगे, और सी, डी और ई से हम आपस में ताल्लुकात खत्म कर देंगे ट्रेडिंग के। तो ये क्या होता है? दिस इज अ कस्टम्स यूनियन, इसको कहते हैं कस्टम्स यूनियन। तो कस्टम यूनियन जो होता है वो कॉमन एक्सटर्नल टैरिफ लगाता है। वो कहता है कि जी हम ए और बी मिल जाते हैं, वो कहते हैं कि हम सी से जो है वो ट्रेडिंग करते वक्त 10% टैरिफ लगाएंगे। बी भी कहता है मैं भी वही उतना ही टैरिफ लगाऊंगा जितना आप लगाएंगे। तो कस्टम यूनियन में ये होता है। क्वेश्चन नंबर 25, द टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड ऑफ अ डेवलपिंग कंट्री फेल फ्रॉम 90 to 80 in 2015, assuming the index of its import prices remained constant at 110. What happened to its index of export prices? आसान सा क्वेश्चन है। इंडेक्स ऑफ इम्पोर्ट प्राइसेस जो है वो कह रहे हैं इंडेक्स ऑफ इम्पोर्ट प्राइसेस कांस्टेंट था 110, तो एक्सपोर्ट, तो अगर इंडेक्स आप अगर टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड गिर रहे हैं इसका मतलब है कि इंडेक्स ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट प्राइसेस जो है वो गिर रही होंगी डेफिनेटली। तो कितना परसेंटेज डिक्लाइन कितना आ रहा है 90 से 80 में? 10/90 टाइम्स 100 कितना आ रहा है? 11 पॉइंट समथिंग आ रहा होगा, 11.1 आ रहा है, तो फेल बाय 11। तो इसमें क्या हो रहा है, आपके टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड जो है वो डिक्लाइन हो रहे हैं 90 से 80। सही है, हम अज्यूम कह रहे हैं कि अगर आप अज्यूम करें, बिकॉज टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड इज द इंडेक्स ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट प्राइसेस ओवर इम्पोर्ट प्राइसेस, राइट? तो अगर आपकी इंपोर्ट प्राइसेस में कोई चेंज ही नहीं आया है, उतनी ही है, इसका मतलब एक्सपोर्ट प्राइसेस गिरी होंगी। तो जितने से आपके टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड गिरे होंगे उतने से ही आपकी एक्सपोर्ट प्राइसेस भी गिरी होंगी। फिर तो टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड आपकी 11.1 से गिरे, तो अप्रोक्सीमेटली दे फेल बाय 11। ठीक है, क्वेश्चन नंबर 26, which type of import control allow a country to develop a potential comparative advantage in a particular good? A quota? No. Short term tariff that protects an infant? हाँ, ये होगा इसका आंसर। A short term tariff that protects an infant industry, because आपकी जो infant industry होती है ना उसमें आपकी आती है सनराइज फर्म्स, और ये जो सनराइज फर्म्स होती हैं दे हैव अ पोटेंशियल कंपैरेटिव एडवांटेज। अगर आप उनके ऊपर उनको प्रोटेक्ट नहीं करेंगे तो जो पोटेंशियल कंपैरेटिव एडवांटेज है वो खत्म हो जाएगा, बिकॉज फॉरेन फर्म्स डंप करेंगे प्रोडक्ट्स को। तो इसलिए आप टैरिफ लगाते हैं, टेम्पररी तौर पे लगाते हैं। शॉर्ट टर्म इसलिए बोला है कि वो टेम्पररी लगाते हैं जब तक उनका कंपैरेटिव एडवांटेज अपना रियलाइज नहीं कर ले। वंस वो रियलाइज कर लेती हैं, वो ग्रो हो जाती हैं, उसके बाद टैरिफ हट जाते हैं। क्वेश्चन नंबर 27, द डायग्राम शोज एग्रीगेट डिमांड एंड एग्रीगेट सप्लाई, द इनिशियल इक्विलिब्रियम इज एट पॉइंट ई। तो ये हमारा इनिशियल इक्विलिब्रियम आ रहा है। व्हाट कॉजेस शिफ्ट्स इन एग्रीगेट सप्लाई कर्व फ्रॉम AS to AS1 एंड AS to AS2? AS1 से AS1 पे हम कब जाएंगे और AS से AS2 पे कब जाएंगे? इसका आंसर होगा डी। हम AS1 पे तब जाएंगे जब हमारे पास स्किल्ड लेबर की शॉर्टेज होगी, तो जाहिर है कॉस्ट राइज हो जाएगी, कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन राइज हो जाएगी, जिसकी वजह से हम एग्रीगेट सप्लाई विल शिफ्ट टू द लेफ्ट। राइट पे कब जाएंगे? देयर विल बी एन इंप्रूवमेंट इन ट्रेनिंग ऑफ वर्कफोर्स वुड लीड टू मोर एफिशिएंट एंड प्रोडक्टिव लेबर, दैट इज व्हाई वी विल शिफ्ट टू योर एग्रीगेट सप्लाई विल शिफ्ट टू द राइट। सही है, मेक सेंस? आगे बढ़ जाएं। क्वेश्चन नंबर 28, व्हाट एक्शन माइट बी पार्ट ऑफ एन एक्सपेंशनरी इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी? Reducing the budget deficit, अच्छा, reducing the level of government spending, reducing the budget deficit का तो मतलब है कि आप बजट डेफिसिट कम करते हैं गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग कम करके, तो ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता। गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग कम करेंगे तो एडी गिर जाएगी। एक्सपेंशनरी इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी का मतलब है एडी बढ़ा रहे हैं आप, बूम की तरफ जा रहे हैं, यू ट्राइंग टू रिड्यूस द अमाउंट ऑफ रिसेशन, सो एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ा रहे हैं आप। The answer would be, अगर ये इंक्रीजिंग मनी सप्लाई होता तो ये आंसर होता, बिकॉज इट वुड हैव रिप्रेजेंटेड एन एक्सपेंशनरी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी. इसका आंसर होगा डी, रिड्यूसिंग द रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट व्हिच रिप्रेजेंट्स एक्सपेंशनरी फिस्कल पॉलिसी. ठीक है. क्वेश्चन नंबर 29. The government is faced with rising inflation. It wishes to reduce inflationary pressure while avoiding a fall in output. देखो, अगर आप इन्फ्लेशनरी प्रेशर को कम करेंगे ना, एडी कम करके, एडी को कम करेंगे तो क्या होगा? व्हाट विल हैपन? इन्फ्लेशन तो कम हो जाएगी बट जीडीपी भी गिर जाएगी, राइट? सो द करेक्ट वे टू डू इज दैट यू इंक्रीज योर एग्रीगेट सप्लाई. दैट इज द राइट वे टू एक्चुअली रिड्यूस इन्फ्लेशन. सो इसमें क्या होगा? योर प्राइस लेवल विल फॉल, इट विल रिजल्ट इनटू गुड डिफ्लेशन, और गुड डिफ्लेशन के साथ साथ जीडीपी भी बढ़ेगी. दिस इज द राइट. अब देखो कौन सा फैक्टर है जो एसआरएएस को शिफ्ट कर सकता है टू द राइट. ए, an increase in laws to promote competition. The more the competition, the more the efficiency, the more the industry will expand, and your aggregate supply would increase. So competition policies would encourage your aggregate supply to rise. Increase in taxation नहीं. Increase in budget surplus का मतलब है कि आप गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग को बढ़ा रहे हैं, ये तो हम चाहते नहीं है. Increase in exchange rate. Exchange rate अगर increase हो जाएगा तो उससे imports बढ़ जाएंगी और exports कम हो जाएंगी, यानी net exports गिर जाएंगी, एडी गिर जाएगा, और हम तो इन्फ्लेशनरी प्रेशर को कम करना चाह रहे हैं बाय अवॉइडिंग द फॉल इन आउटपुट. तो एडी तो गिर जाएगा बट आउटपुट भी गिर जाएगा इस केस में, बिकॉज जब एक्सचेंज रेट इंक्रीज होता है तो हमारी नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स गिर जाती हैं, बिकॉज तो अगर नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स हमारी गिर जाएंगी तो एडी विल फॉल, बट एट द सेम टाइम योर आउटपुट विल फॉल एज वेल. सो दिस इज नॉट द आंसर. सी, ए शुड बी द आंसर. Why may a government seek to reduce a current account surplus on the balance of payment? To lower inflation, to lower, so basically current account surplus means that exports are higher than imports, right? So if exports are higher than imports, then obviously the export industry is booming, तो unemployment तो low होगी नहीं, high होगी, तो ये तो हो खा नहीं सकता. To raise economic growth rate, economic growth already काफी high होगी. To raise the exchange rate, अगर गवर्नमेंट करंट अकाउंट सरप्लस को कम करने की कोशिश करेगी तो वो किस तरह कम करने की कोशिश करेगी? गवर्नमेंट कम करने की कोशिश करेगी एक्सपोर्ट्स को कम करके और इंपोर्ट्स को बढ़ा के. अगर एक्सपोर्ट्स को कम किया जाएगा, इंपोर्ट्स को बढ़ाया जाएगा, तो करेंसी तो डेप्रिशिएट हो जाएगी उस केस में, एक्सचेंज रेट तो नीचे आ जाएगा. तो इसमें लिखा हुआ है रेज द एक्सचेंज रेट, ये भी नहीं हो सकता. तो आंसर बचाइए. और ये वाला आंसर इट मेक सेंस एज वेल, क्योंकि अगर आप इन्फ्लेशन को अगर आप देखें, एक्सपोर्ट्स अगर इंपोर्ट से ज्यादा है, इसका मतलब है कि नेट एक्सपोर्ट ज्यादा है. नेट एक्सपोर्ट ज्यादा है तो एडी काफी हाई होगी, तो इन्फ्लेशन होगी उसकी वजह से. तो गवर्नमेंट क्या करेगी? हमने पढ़ा था ना कि सरप्लस जो होता है करंट अकाउंट का वो इन्फ्लेशनरी होता है बिकॉज ऑफ राइजिंग एक्सपोर्ट्स. तो गवर्नमेंट इन्फ्लेशन को कम करने की चक्कर में सरप्लस को कम करेगी, करंट अकाउंट सरप्लस को, ताकि एक्सपोर्ट्स को रिड्यूस करेगी या प्रॉब्ली इंपोर्ट्स बढ़ाएगी. ठीक है जी, ताकि अल्टीमेट ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या होगा? एडी को रिड्यूस कर सके. सो या दिस वाज अ गुड पेपर बट अ डिफिकल्ट वन. थोड़ा टाइम भी लगा इसके अंदर.